How far we have still to go. Earlier this week, a beloved elder of the church asked me, in the face of this authoritarianism, in the face of this violent suppression of liberty, which we must say is nothing new to people of color, amidst the ongoing attacks of people of color, how do we keep on keeping on? They asked me, how do we, like John Lewis, endure and keep trying to make good trouble? Caused me to want to revisit a sermon that I offered about 6 years ago, a sermon that began with a question. Did you know that the final words Dr. Martin Luther King spoke just before he was assassinated were about a song that sustained and fed his spirit? Moments before that single shot rang out at 6:01 p.m. on that day of death in early April 1968, Dr. King was speaking about his favorite hymn, one that was composed in the wake of another tragedy several decades earlier. And even if you know the story, it's worth revisiting on this Martin Luther King Sunday in this troubled and terrible January 2026. The first thing that we need to do is remember that the bedrock and the foundation of Dr. Martin Luther King's moral vision for America rose from his beloved Christian faith. Dr. King loved Jesus, and he believed Jesus loved and lifted him. Now, over time, our white supremacy culture has softened, or at least tried to soften, the radical aspects of Dr. King's words and actions. This social revolutionary, who was one of the most hated and feared persons in America, has been wrongly reduced to a comfortable dreamer, digestible to all. And that is not who Dr. King was. He was a revolutionary for justice and equity for all people. He confronted the authoritarian powers of the state and federal government, who were using terror and murder to enforce a vision of a white supremacist capitalistic nation that would do all it could to subjugate black, indigenous people of color, as well as the poor of any race. Outside of black circles, we've also secularized him. Dr. King wasn't just propelled by a deep belief in social and economic justice and equity. Dr. King was propelled by his Christian faith, which led him by extension into his sacred work of social and economic justice and equity. As Unitarian Universalists, it's important for us not to forget that the person who was perhaps America's greatest social justice warrior of modern times was following the teachings of an earlier social justice warrior named Jesus. It's important to remember that the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was the leading force in America for the push for civil rights, and Dr. King was its first president. As a freshly minted Christian minister speaking to participants in the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott, Dr. King proclaimed, "We must keep God in the forefront. Let us be Christian in all our actions. Love is one of the pinnacle parts of the Christian faith. A 2015 Vox.com article by Brandon Ambrosino remembers King was greatly influenced by a theology known as personalism, which Rufus Burrow Jr. describes as the philosophy that God is personal, and persons possess infinite, inviolable dignity, what Unitarian Universalists call the inherent worthiness and dignity of each person. But see, King was connected to Christianity since birth. His name even reflects it. According to an article on Dr. King's Christian roots published in Christianity Today, he was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1929 as Michael King. But in 1935, his father, himself a Baptist minister, changed both of their names to Martin Luther to honor the German Christian Protestant reformer. Brandon Ambrosino quotes Dr. J. Cameron Carter, who comments, King was a church person from beginning to end. But Ambrosino remarks, if King was a church person, it's important to note that he was of a specific type of church person. We miss King if we don't highlight the theological significance of the Black Christian church in America. In the face of a modern condition that told blacks they were only worthy of their labor power, black churches came along and affirmed that there was a mode of life far beyond the woundings that came along with the black existence in America. The black church was organizing a resistant movement against the authoritarian power of the state and federal government, which is why the FBI had infiltrated the black churches, especially in the South. Ambrosino continues saying, this black Christian church is the tradition that produced King, and it's the same tradition that produced other black civil rights leaders like Fannie Lou Hamer, Claudette Colvin, Medgar Evers, and Ella Baker, and so many more. And it's from within this that King emerges, not as a singular visionary divorced from any context, but as a reflection of the consciousness of the group. This is the source of King's dream. Ambrosino quotes philosopher Cornel West. The American dream is individualistic. King's dream was collective. The American dream says, I can engage in upward mobility and live the good life. King's dream was fundamentally Christian. His commitment to radical love had everything to do with his commitment to Jesus of Nazareth, and his dream had everything to do with community, with a we consciousness that included poor and working people around the world, not just black people. Brandon Ambrosino continues, because of King's subversive vision, Cornel West has described him as an extremist of love. I love that, an extremist of love. To understand why West believes King's love to be truly radical, you have to understand what exactly love meant to King. The love King preached and practiced was lifted straight from the Christian scriptures teaching on agape, the Greek word used for the love of God, which King defined as an overflowing of love which seeks nothing in return. King's love talk came out of what it means to love your neighbor. Loving your neighbor, says Bradley, means loving people who don't love you back, because God commands love as a means by which the world is completely turned upside down. King is talking about love in ways that point toward forms of life that are non-exclusionary, says Dr. K. Cameron Carter. King's notion of love really was revolutionary in that it threatened to undo the social stratifications that undergird our modern world. That is why, like the prophet Jesus who preceded him, King would be killed. Death was on Dr. Martin Luther King's mind when he arrived in Memphis on April 3rd, 1968. He was returning to Memphis to support the sanitation workers' strike against the city. The strike was exposing the city's economic exploitation of its 1,300 black sanitation employees. A strike the city was trying to break with vicious violence against peaceful protesters. Death was on Dr. Martin Luther King's mind when he arrived at Memphis that day. That day, his plane had been delayed because of yet another bomb threat. This was just another in a steady stream of impediments that had been battering Dr. King. He was bruised by multiple rebukes, vilifying his public opposition to the Vietnam War and condemning his formation of the Poor People's Campaign to demand economic equality for all people, not just black people. Some of his closest friends were accusing him of betrayal for diluting the focus on race and splintering power to other battles. Dr. King was also deeply disheartened by the rising tide of violent inner-city protests by blacks who felt his message of love in the face of hate was not bringing about the changes that were needed. Dr. King arrived in Memphis so tired, his friends said, so weak, so worn. Friends said he was despondent, depressed. He was so tired, literally so tired, he didn't have the energy to speak to the rally that night as planned. Ralph Abernathy agreed to step in for the emotionally and physically exhausted 39-year-old Dr. King. In my imagination, I see Dr. King lying on his bed at the Lorraine Motel. In my imagination, I see curtains drawn, the room darkening as twilight envelops, with Dr. King just lying there, weighed down with the stillness of exhaustion, feeling all but defeated. In my imagination, Dr. King's reeling mind remembers the word of a song, one that has sustained his spirit and fed his soul over these hard, soul-crushing years. It is a song created in the wake of heartbreak and tragedy. In 1932, the young wife of Thomas A. Dorsey, the song's composer, died in childbirth. Dorsey's newborn son died the next morning. Broken with grief, Dorsey wrote a musical cry for strength to go on. Like Dr. King, Thomas A. Dorsey was a black man and a Christian. He was also music director at the same Ebenezer Baptist Church that Dr. King would pastor 28 years later. Dorsey turned his anguish into the words and music that became Dr. King's favorite song. In my imagination, I see Dr. King lying exhausted in that room at the Lorraine Motel, crying out Dorsey's words of despair. Precious Lord, take my hand. Lead me on. Let me stand. I am tired. I am weak. I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord. Lead me home. Those words give him, yet again, the ability to push aside his weariness and to rise up from that bed in that lonely little hotel room and to go to that sanitation workers' rally where he will give, without a script, one of the greatest speeches of his life and one of the greatest speeches in American history. King said, I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. He preached words that foretold his death the next day, while inspiring those 1,300 sanitation workers to keep on keeping on. Author Robert F. Darden brings our story home, writing, the following day, April 4th, popular musician Ben Branch arrived from Chicago to play at that night's rally at Dr. King's personal request. Just before 6 p.m., as King, Jesse Jackson, and others prepared to leave for an early dinner before that evening's mass meeting, saxophonist Ben Branch walked by in the parking lot of the Lorraine Motel. From the second floor, King spotted him and called out, "Man, look, tonight," King said, leaning over the railing from the second floor, "I want you to play Precious Lord tonight like you never played it before." Startled, Ben Branch responded, "Dr. King, I do that all the time." "No," King said, "man, I tell you, tonight I want that song. I mean, I want you to play it pretty tonight. Play it pretty." Branch nodded vigorously. "I'm going to do that," he said. Satisfied, King smiled and leaned forward slightly. "Don't forget, I mean, I want Precious Lord. Play it tonight." And with that, Dr. Martin Luther King turned back to his hotel room to retrieve his coat. And in that moment, an assassin's bullet ripped through his throat. Take his hand, precious Lord, lead him home. Que así sea, bendito sea. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.